friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Victoria and today we're going to be talking about the 5-star reads that I had from January and February. So last year I did a video around June or July where I talked about all the 5-star reads that I read in the first half of the month, and that video was just very long and hard to deal with because I didn't get a lot of time to talk about each of the books because I had so many. So for this year, I've decided to do what Jess from Peace Love Books does, which is separate the 5-star reads by season. So for this first one, we're going to be doing winter reads, but I included my December 5 stars in all my 5-star reads for the 2022 video. So I'll link that video down below so you can see the 5-star reads that I had in December. But for this video, we are going to include my 5 stars from January and February. So it just makes it a little easier because I have less books to talk about in each video and they aren't as long and overwhelming. So I have 8 books to talk about that are all my 5-star reads that I've had so far this year from January and February. So I'm just gonna get right into them. I'm gonna take my glasses off because I don't like the way it's reflecting in the camera, so I hope that that's all right. So the first 5-star read that I actually had for 2023 was Pack Darling Part 2 by Lola Rock. This is an Omegaverse duet. It's book 2 in the duet, and I have recommended this actually a couple of times since I read it. I absolutely loved this duet. So like I said, this is an Omegaverse duet, and it is a reverse harem. And it is about a heroine named Lila who is basically blackmailed into being part of this pack, but the pack actually doesn't want her there. And so in part 1, they very much bully her and are very awful to her because they don't want her there. And then in part 2, which is the one that I actually did give 5 stars to, it's them groveling and trying to better themselves in order to be worthy of her. And I absolutely loved the whole duet, but book 2 specifically was just so great. I love a grovel. I love a hero who knows that they've fucked up, and having it be multiple heroes. And like, these men do a lot in order to try and prove that they are deserving of Lila. And they go to therapy, and there's so much. They like do much more than just like apologize and like grovel. They like try and change the things that led them to be mean to her. So like I said, they like go to therapy, and I really loved this, and I loved everything about this whole duet. I think it was so great. But book 2 specifically, I'm so glad I read it, and 5 stars. I would highly recommend it. I actually just recommended it in a romance duets video, so I'll link that down below also if you haven't seen that one. The second 5-star that I had was Whispers of You by Catherine Cowles. I read this as an ARC and I adored this. I'm a big Catherine Cowles fan, and I've loved her Tattered and Torn series, and I love her Sutter Lake, I think it's what it's called. I like her Sutter Lake series also, and I was so excited to have a new Catherine Cowles book, and I loved this. This is a second chance romance, which I am starting to love. I've mentioned that a couple of times recently in like 2023 and the end of 2022 also, that I used to not like second chance romances. I would actively avoid them, and now I like actually enjoy them. Like, they're like ones that I don't think that second chance romance is like one of my least favorite tropes now. I actually really like them. I was just reading the wrong second chance romances. So this is a second chance romance that really freaking worked for me. I really loved this. So basically, the heroine and the hero were high school sweethearts. They were very, very much in love, and then there is a shooting that happens in the beginning of this book where the heroine gets injured, and the hero very much blames himself, and he leaves town and leaves because he blames himself for what happened, and he joins the military, and he becomes part of a private security company, and like 10 years go by and he rarely ever comes back to the town. But then his father has a stroke. And the hero ends up having to come back to the town to see his father and help his father and his family. and he and the heroine end up seeing each other again. The hero very much never stopped loving the heroine, which is one of my favorite things with second chance romances. I love when they were like always in their mind, but they needed the distance and the space to grow and be better. And I think that that's exactly what happened in this book. I really think that their separation, their time apart, allowed the heroine to become much more independent and much more confident in her own self, because she very much used to rely on the hero a lot, and she learns how to be confident in herself, learns how to be just more herself, learns herself more. And I really love the way that they come back together, especially because there is a suspense plot in it. For the 10-year anniversary of the shooting that happened to them, more people are getting shot in the town. The survivors of that shooting from 10 years ago are getting shot, and the heroine's now in danger, and so the hero refuses to let her get injured again. And it's so good. I highly recommend it. It was such a good start to the series. So freaking good. The next one that I have is Heartless by Elsie Silver. This is gonna be as no surprise to anybody. Literally everyone has read and give this book 5 stars. This was so many people's top book of 2022, and I unfortunately had to wait until the audiobook was out. But I actually am glad, because the audiobook was done fantastically. The narrators were so perfect, and I totally get why people love this book. I had such a fun time reading this. I love a single dad romance. You guys know that that's one of my favorite tropes. And so this single dad age gap nanny romance just worked for me. There is something in this that just perfectly works for people, and it is such a good romance. I love Cade and Willa. Cade is so grumpy, and he loves his son so much, and he loves his family and is dedicated to his family and his farm and his job. And Willa is so free-spirited and so fun. I really loved her so much more as a heroine than I did Summer from Flawless. And I think part of the reason why I didn't give Flawless 5 stars is I didn't really get the heroine that much, but I loved Willa, and I totally was like, I would make that same decision. I totally understood her, and I loved her romance with Cade. I loved how it developed, and it was just the perfect romance. It was so freaking good. The next 5 star that I have is Broken by the Horde King by Zoe Draven. I can't go too much into this book actually, because it is book, I think, 4 or 5 in a series. It is the Horde Kings of Drakkar series, and I love this whole series. Actually, one of the books, the first book in the series, was on my top 22 of 2022. So I've talked about this series a lot, but this one specifically is, it's got second chance vibes, but it is more a childhood friends, and then they have a falling out, and then they become lovers later on when they come back together. The hero in this one is a Horde King, and his childhood best friend had a huge crush on him when they were children. She is actually a human who grew up in with the Drakkari people, and she has always had a crush on the hero, and she actually puts herself out there and basically asks the hero if he likes her too, and he very much blatantly rejects her in front of the entire village, and it does not go well, and she feels very rejected and very upset, and they have a very large falling out because of it. And then multiple years later, he returns to the village, and she ends up becoming part of his horde and becoming the doctor for his horde, and he wants her, and it is so good. I absolutely loved this one. It's such a good addition to the series. I loved the way that the series is progressing, and I just think that they're so well written and so interesting, and just Zoe Draven is such a good writer. Then the next one that I have is The New Guy by Serena Bowen. This is a hockey romance, and it's been a really long time since I've given a Serena Bowen 5 stars. Serena Bowen used to be one of my all-time favorite authors, and I still stand by her. I really do love her books and so many of her older books. I've actually read her entire backlist, and her new releases recently in 2022, I think all of the releases that I read in 2022 and maybe even 2021, I didn't give 5 stars. So I was so freaking excited with how much I loved The New Guy. I love Serena Bowen's book specifically. I just think that she writes really well. I mean, Him is one of my all-time favorite books ever. And this book gave me Him vibes, like the same sort of like excitement that I felt reading Him, I did get in this. I don't love this one as much as Him. Obviously, Him is one of my, like I said, all-time favorite books ever, but this is so good. Definitely deserving of the 5 stars. This one is about a hero named Gavin, who is a new player on the Brooklyn Bruisers. He is a professional hockey player, and he just wants a team to keep him. He has constantly been traded. He's never been on a team for like more than 1 season. He just wants to like feel more comfortable and like settled on a team. He also is bi, but in the closet, and so he doesn't want to come out until he has that opportunity to like feel at home on a team and just like feel connected to the team, which he hasn't had because he keeps getting traded, especially because he had he tried to come out to some people in his past and it did not go well. He got very jilted by it. So he ends up having a romance with a guy named, the guy who is on the team's name is Hudson. The other hero's name is Gavin. And so Gavin is actually a single father, and he is a widower. His husband died a couple of years ago, and he just moved him and his daughter to New York City because he got a job working as a sports therapist basically for the Brooklyn Bruisers. So Hudson and Gavin end up meeting each other at a bar, not knowing who the other is, and they flirt and they are about to go home together when Hudson realizes that they live in the same building and that he works for the team, and he freaks out because, like I said, he's in the closet, and their whole shenanigans start from there. I loved this. I loved this romance. I loved the way that the daughter played a role in this. They're also, the two of them are also neighbors, and it just made it so good. They were constantly running into each other. Hudson is also rehabbing an injury, and so he's constantly with Gavin, and Gavin has to like massage him, and it causes all sorts of just like amazing moments of just like having to put his hands on his body. So freaking good. All the feels. There is a twist that I was not expecting towards the end of this book that like tore my heart out for a second before I got back to the HEA. But damn, this book was so good. I had such a good time reading it, and I loved it. The next one that I have 5 stars is actually a novella, and it's called Mistletoe by Kimberly Lemming. This, I had had Kimberly Lemming on my TBR for ages, and I'm glad that I finally read her because I did absolutely love this novella. I'm definitely gonna have to read more from her. But this one is a sort of fantasy-like one where the heroine's father has been cursed. He's a blacksmith, and he's basically has this curse on him that everything that he makes is alive. And so all of the like swords and axes and like weapons that he makes in his shop, they talk, they're alive. And they can't sell the weapons because the weapons are sassy and they like are insulting the customers. And so the heroine sets out to find this demon to try and get the curse reversed from her father. When she finds him, he's this like fox shifter guy, and he's basically like, I will remove the curse from your father if you come with me to this event and pretend to be my mate, because I want to own this territory and you can't own territory unless you're mated. And so she's like, okay, sure, I'll fake date you, fake pretend to be your mate at this party. And shenanigans all around. It was hilarious. And this one of the she brings a sword with her that talks. Her name is Alexis. She's hilarious. Honestly, one of the best side characters that I've ever had in a romance book. I was obsessed. The next one that I have is a small town romance, and it was probably my favorite book of February, and that is Fall into Temptation by Lucy Score. I loved this. This is, like I said, a small town romance. It is a single mother, and the hero is the mayor of this small town. The heroine moves to this small town and actually rents the house on the hero's property, and so he's her landlord, and she's a yoga instructor, and this small town just has absolutely the best interactions. It was so funny. The small town is just perfect. They have these very wacky traditions. They have all of these meddling people that are trying to get these two together. I loved the children in this. They were so good for the story. I love when the kids actually like play an important part and they aren't just like there. I loved this. I loved the hero and the heroine and the kids, all of the side characters. Just everything about this gave me absolutely cozy, happy, adorable romance times, and I had such a good time with this. I've said this in my wrap-up, but this book is written in third person, so if that's not your vibe, I get it, but I absolutely love it, and this series just gives me such good feels, and I adore it. Then the last 5-star that I actually have is Maniac by Onley James. This is the last book in the Necessary Evil series, which is one of my favorite series ever. This is an MM romance with the hero is a psychopath and the other hero is actually his ex-adopted father. And this has a very large age gap in it. And you have to read the rest of the series in order to read this book. You cannot read them out of order. Okay, I just had to change my battery, so I'm sorry if it's different. But what I was saying is that I highly, 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 highly recommend reading this series in order. You do get the most of Thomas and Aiden if you read the whole thing. But basically, this series is about a billionaire who is a psychologist, and he wants to study psychopaths, and so he adopts a bunch of psychopathic children and raises them to be killers, but to only kill bad guys. And his hero in his book is one of his adopted sons who was a lot older when he adopted him. He was actually like 17 when he adopted him, and it was really good. I really enjoyed this book. It's not my favorite in the series. My favorite in the series is definitely Psycho and Headcase, but this book still was so freaking good, so enjoyable, a good like ending to the series, and there were definitely things that I sort of wish were added that I wanted to see, but even without those things, I still really, really, really enjoyed it, and it was such a good ending to the story. It was what I wanted from Thomas and Aiden, and I loved their romance so much, so I had to give it 5 stars. But that is the last 5-star that I had for January and February. So like I said in the beginning of this video, for the next time that I do this video, it'll be 30 months. This one's just shorter because it's the first beginning of the year. But that is all that I have for you. So I hope that you enjoyed this and that maybe you can find a new book that you enjoy. But that is going to be it for this video. So like it if you liked it, subscribe, and I hope that you have the absolute best day.